Good evening. My name is Aster Haley, and for this bedtime story, we join Billy, who on a sleepless wintry night discovers a new type of tea that will take her to the land of dreams. So cozy up under the blankets and make yourself as comfortable as needed for a good night's sleep. When you're all settled in, close your eyes. Billy had been laying in bed for an hour, but somehow she couldn't fall asleep. Every part of her body was tired, and her eyes were heavy, but her mind just wouldn't settle. Thoughts of the day's event kept appearing and surfacing. A gust of wind sent a flurry of snow rattling across her window. It sounded as though someone was throwing sand against the glass. As sleep would not come, Billy rolled over and got out of bed. She slipped into her fluffy robe and slippers and walked to the kitchen. Table lights switch on. The room, in which still lingered the earlier evening scent of cinnamon buns, was now bathed in a warm halo. From the sage-colored cupboards, she retrieved her favorite mug and placed it on the wooden counter. It was a tall midnight blue ceramic mug that her best friend had given her last year, and it could hold an impressive amount of tea. She filled the old enameled kettle with cold water, put it on the stovetop, and ignited the gas. Then she stepped into the pantry. Just above the basket of potatoes and onions, at knee height, was her library of teas, a jumbled collection of boxes that lined an entire shelf. Billy bent over, leaning on the higher shelf, which held jars of various grains, and scanned the tops of the boxes. This middle-of-the-night activity was already tiring. Let's see. Ginger, lemon balm, green tea, rooibos tea. She thought, disappointed. None of the choices enticed her. Next to these boxes was a pretty pastel-colored case. She opened it to find several small round metal tins with clear lids through which she could see loose tea and dried fruit. Oh yeah, she remembered. It was that set of tea her brother David had gifted her a couple months earlier for the holidays. Billy realized she still hadn't tried any. The holiday season had been so busy with family trips to visit relatives out of town that she had spent very little time at home, and even less in her kitchen. She picked a tin and unscrewed the lid. She slightly shook it, inspecting its contents. It looked like candied fruit, dried flower petals, and some mysterious dried herb. And it smelled of a summer meadow. She smiled. Her tea had found her. The kettle whistled, signaling a rolling boil. Based on the few instructions on the back of the tin, Billy realized the water had to be a tad less hot. So she took her time to transfer a generous spoonful of the loose tea into a small metal ball. She placed it into her mug and waited. Leaning against the counter, she listened to the low hum of the refrigerator. In the dim light, she considered how cozy her kitchen felt, even in the middle of the night. How lucky she was to have a warm place to make tea any time of day or night. The headlights of a passing car outside her apartment momentarily illuminated the room, shaking her out of her reverie. It's been a few moments now, she thought. The water temperature must be just right by now. Billy carefully picked the kettle and filled the mug with hot water which instantly turned to a deep ruby red, and the rich tones of the infusion rose with the tendrils of steam. Billy walked back to her bedroom, in which glowed the pink halo of her small pink Himalayan salt lamp. Standing at her frost-filled window, she cradled the mug with both hands and gazed out at the winter's night grumbling on the other side of the glass. She leaned in to smell her tea, the aromatic steam tickling her face. The fragrant smells were vaguely familiar to her. She wished she knew what they were, but the mysterious ingredients were not marked on the tin. That predominant smell is so familiar, she thought. Is it hibiscus? The icy precipitation outside gave way to a gentle flurry of snow. Chunky flakes zigged and drifted to the ground, and the mug was so warm in her hands. Bundled in her robe and staring out at the snow, she felt very cozy. Billy took her first sip of tea. A taste of tangy floral bloom filled her mouth. Hibiscus. It was hibiscus. She smiled. As the tea percolated across her taste buds, more subtle strains surfaced. A pleasant vision of fruits and flowers came to mind. Billy wondered if she'd be able to guess each flavor. Are those strawberries? She wondered. The mouthful concluded with a bold sweetness, followed by a satisfying tart afterbite. My tea has definitely found me, she mused. Billy propped a pile of pillows on her bed to lean on. She wasn't lying down, but not quite sitting up either. She was melting into a fluffy nest. With every sip of tea, she detected a slightly different combination of ingredients. Billy's eyelids were growing heavy, so she let them close and recited the elements of her tea like a sleepy mantra. Hibiscus, strawberries. Hibiscus, strawberries. Hibiscus, strawberries. Billy spoke slower and slower. Her flurried thoughts, which had prevented her from drifting off to sleep, were now going quiet. She opened her eyes only to take another sip, then put the mug down on her nightstand and closed her eyes again. She noticed another ingredient. Mint. Hibiscus, strawberries, mint. Billy recited the words very slowly now, her voice growing faint as she focused more and more on the flavors swirling in her mouth. So there's hibiscus, strawberries, and mint. Yes, mint. But there seemed to be another familiar flavor she just couldn't pinpoint. What's that last flavor, she wondered. Hibiscus, strawberries, mint. Billy sighed. Drowsy, she felt sleep enveloping her, as if pulled into the arms of Morpheus. Eyes closed, she felt the warmth of the sun on her eyelids. It was as if her infusion had conjured a tranquil summer day. Somewhere in the distance, a lilting musical duel between two robins echoed through an ocean of leaves, clattering in the breeze. How could summer be already here, she thought. Billy slowly opened her eyes and found herself on a grassy, sun-dappled hill. Above her, the long dangling branches of a willow tree swayed and whispered. As she sat up, she realized she was atop a hill overlooking colorful fields which undulated all the way back to the horizon. Then, carried by the wind, the aroma floated up to her, and she remembered why she was there. Hibiscus, strawberries, mint. What's the final ingredient, she wondered. Billy stood up. A small butterfly fluttered up to her, flying in a wild zigzag in front of her still tired eyes. Its wings caught the sun, setting them alight in a bright orange. It seemed as though the butterfly was trying to make her follow it, so Billy, without knowing why, started to trail behind the butterfly. She walked down the hill, inhaling the surrounding aromas as she went. The butterfly led her to a bright expanse of orange and red flowers, and the entire field gleamed in the sun. Hibiscus. Billy paused, taking in the beauty of the sight. The butterfly hovered momentarily and then shimmered into the field. Dozens of butterflies of every color imaginable were now fluttering from flower to flower. Billy walked forward and let the flower's perfume envelop her. The scent of the hibiscus was delicate, like that first breath of summer. She remembered how it had tasted in her tea, and she smiled. She walked with hands outstretched, gently brushing the flowers as she went. She paused when she saw her butterfly again. It had landed on the largest hibiscus blossom, as if inviting her to taste it. Billy pulled a petal loose from the flower and held it up to the sun. The light coming through the petal made it smolder like the most exquisite stained glass. Purple, reds, and oranges melted into one another like they were liquid in motion. Billy put the petal in her mouth. The flavor was familiar and new all at once. She felt herself floating for a moment. Then she noticed an old wicker basket on the ground. She picked it up and slung it over her arm. As she walked through the field of hibiscus, she carefully pulled away petals from all different colors and sizes and placed them in the basket. At the edge of the field, Billy took a long look around her. Apart from the basket, there was not a single sign that people had ever been here. No fences, roads, buildings, paths, or signs anywhere. Not a single contrail punctuated the beauty of the landscape, and the earth beneath her was soft, its warmth seeping through her bare feet. Billy smelled the strawberries before she saw them. She pushed apart the final curtain of hibiscus flowers, and before her was what seemed like an endless field of wild strawberries. No orderly rows, just sprawling huddles and drifts of glistening red fruit. Billy stepped down from the hibiscus terrace and walked through a natural ledge formation. Perhaps a narrow stream had once trickled through here. The strawberries on either side of her were perfectly ripe, and all were a deep ruby red. Because of the stream bed, Billy didn't have to bend over to pick them. She just reached out and put a handful of berries into her mouth. They were not the oversized, tasteless berries you sometimes find in a supermarket. These wild strawberries were scarlet morsels of pure flavor, tart and sweet in the same mouthful. Just like my tea, Billy mused. Many of the strawberries were flanked by little white flowers with yellow centers. Billy tasted one of these along with the berry. It added a floral kick to the flavor of the fresh fruit. She filled her basket with mounds of berries and dropped in a few flowers for good measure. But as she picked her last handful of strawberries, she inadvertently picked something new. She looked at the plant in her hand. It was a clump of pointy leaves, arrayed around a core of delicate purple flowers. Billy tore one of the leaves and knew instantly what it was. Mint. Billy saw that she was now standing in a miniature forest of spearmint. The plant was bright green in the sunlight, and in this corner of the field, it was everywhere. It grew in great tangled paisleys around and below the strawberries, and she followed it in spirals, foraging as she went. Billy couldn't resist. She wrapped a hibiscus blossom and a strawberry inside a mint leaf and ate the morsel. It was the most refreshing taste she had ever experienced, like summertime on her tongue, and it had all the same notes as her tea. Well, almost. She still needed one more flavor, so Billy pushed through the fields of mint and berries, making her way to the top of the nearest hill. It didn't take long before she was there. She turned around and looked down towards another rolling valley. Beneath was a meandering field, dappled with pale shades of white and yellow. The field rippled in the breeze, as though being tousled by some giant unseen hands. An aroma floated up to her, gently picking her up off the ground. It was more than a scent. It was an entirely new sensation that hovered somewhere in the balmy landscape between bliss and pure relaxation. Chamomile, of course. That was the final flavor in my tea. Billy headed into the field of chamomile. Butterflies rose from every flower she pushed aside, twinkling between blossoms like tiny pixies. A meadowlark warbled from a nearby tree, its melody a syrupy lullaby hanging in the air. Billy picked a flower and brought it close to her nose. She inhaled a blend of pure tranquility. The effect of the chamomile on Billy was magical, mesmeric even. How could a flower smell so wonderful and bring so much serenity at once? She felt she could stay forever in this field, this tranquil place. She placed the flowers into her basket, which by now was overfilled. Billy felt as if she was floating just above the quivering white blossoms. She swayed with the chamomile to the gentle rhythms of the summer wind. She ran her fingers through the blanket of flowers. They were so soft and thick, she felt she could just lie down on them. She put her basket down and sank into the lush white bed. It felt like she had settled onto one of the puffy clouds sliding past, high above. Another bird sang from an unseen perch. Its notes were warm and fluid, like the deep crimson tea in Billy's mug. the gentle sun soothe her skin. She couldn't remember a time where she felt more relaxed. Billy was above the fields now, weightless, floating. She couldn't tell if she was a butterfly or maybe just a leaf cavorting in the breeze. Somewhere, very far away, silvery winds blew drifts of snow through the streets. But here, above the bountiful fields, Billy knew that the sun would always be shining. These fields were hers and hers alone, and she knew she could visit them any time she wanted to. Whenever she needed help crossing into the land of dreams, all she had to do was drink some of her tea. The breeze blew Billy higher and higher, and slowly she rose above the valley. And to the soothing murmur of the wind, she drifted off to faraway fields. On this note, our story ends. I wish you dreams of eternal summertime, where you feel weightless as a butterfly and float away to places only your imagination can create. Good night and sweet dreams.